Amy, for those that don't know you, and hang on, I need to put this on record. Yeah, no, it is recording. Okay, perfect. For those who don't know you, Amy, and I know you, but tell us a little bit about your background, and then we can get into some different topics and talk about whatever you feel like chatting about today will be fun.
Sure. So my story is not unlike a lot of other people's stories. I got into the low carb and keto world because of my own struggles with weight. I never had any real illnesses, but I was heavy, and I was, heavy despite doing what I thought were all the right things. I did lots of exercise. I ate my healthy whole grain cereal with my skim milk and the whole 9 yards. And nothing ever really got the weight off until I discovered low carb. And my entrance into all this was the Atkins diet, which I have celebrated the Atkins diet all these years. It's unfortunate that the Atkins method has kind of gotten a bad reputation in the keto and low carb world, but he was a brilliant guy, way ahead of his time. Anyway, longer story short, I was in and out of a lot of jobs that I was not fulfilled by, didn't really find satisfying. And it occurred to me one day, like, hey, wait a minute, nutritionist is a career. Like maybe I could do that. I could help other people learn about low carb. And so I'm a career changer. I went back to grad school a little bit later in life to study nutrition. And here I am. And I will say, even though I got into it personally for weight loss over the last, however many years that I've been learning about it, at this point, weight loss is the least impressive thing that this diet can do. Like I see we have Brett here. I mean, I recognize many of you that are on the call here. So many people have, put diabetes into remission, or depression, or bipolar, or, the skin clears up, the PCOS goes away. All of this awesome stuff happens. Oh, and by the way, you might also just lose a couple of pounds while all this other great stuff happens. So I think so many people come into low carb and keto and carnivore for weight loss, and they're kind of like surprised that all this great other stuff happens too.
Yeah, Amy, let me go back into, you said you tried all these other diets, and clearly there's been people that do have success by following the caloric reduction. Why do so many of us not have to? Well, I don't know. Again, this is obviously a very controversial topic. There are people that are very polarized about it. There's people that are diehard calories in, calories out, people that are diehard, healthy whole grains, plant-based, so on and so forth. Why do we, because all of us that have done that have mostly tried that. And I don't think anybody in this community, the carnivore community, just said, oh, well, there's 50 diets I'm going to try the one that has all meat. No one here has done that. I mean, all of us have come from, I tried this, I've tried that, and I didn't have success. Or why are some people having success and others not? What do you think the big linchpin or the big differentiator?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think the biggest thing is it just has to do with your own individual sensitivity to carbohydrate. If two people eat a potato, one person's blood sugar and insulin does this, the other person's does this, barely moves. And that's not something, I think there's genetics play into that. I think your formative years, so to speak, play into that. Maybe even like gestationally, what happens in the womb plays into that. So there's a lot of that we don't have control over. So I think, and they've even done studies where they'll do a low carb diet pitted against a low fat diet, and the results overall look the same. But then when they dig deeper and they stratify out based on levels of insulin sensitivity, they find that the people who are the most insulin resistant do way better on low carb. They can do okay on low fat, but they do much better on low carb. And the other thing, this might be a little controversial statement, but we're among friends here that like this kind of controversy. I honestly think there are some people who just psychologically are better able to cope with being hungry all the time or being miserable all the time. And they just tell themselves, well, this is what I have to do to lose weight, or this is a healthy diet. And they kind of ignore feeling bad. And then we have this whole other group of people that knows we can lose weight and feel awesome eating the most luxurious, delicious food. I do think there's some psychology in that. There's some people who don't mind weighing and measuring their food and counting everything and putting everything into a spreadsheet. They thrive on that. I'm never going to be that kind of a person. But there's other people that are maybe into that, and they can sort of psychologically tolerate having to micromanage every little thing they eat. Whereas like on this kind of a diet, thank God we don't have to.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm sure you may be aware of the recent sort of pilot study Kevin Hall just did. Did you see that come out? Yeah, and so for those, and I kind of mentioned this the other day, I mean, for those who don't know, Kevin Hall did a study as a metabolic ward study. It was a randomized controlled trial, 2 weeks on a low-fat plant-based diet, 2 weeks on a animal-heavy keto diet, and the results were the people on the plant-based diet lost more body fat, they ate less calories, and he states that satiety levels were more. The people on the ketogenic diet ate about 700 calories extra every single day. They still lost weight, although much of it was water, glycogen, and intestinal contents. And so, some of the differentials, the plant-based people saw their glucose and insulin go up or become less stable. The meat-based people had stable, low insulin, stable, low glucose. The plant-based people saw the triglycerides go up, and their LDL cholesterol go down, as well as their HDL. The meat-based people saw their LDL cholesterol stay the same for the most part. Triglycerides go down, HDL drops slightly. And so the plant-based people are saying, of course, big win for the plant-based people. Look, we can eat less calories. We're not as hungry eating less calories. I've got my thoughts on those results, but what are your thoughts on that? Did you take a time to read the study and comment,
Well,
or is that too early for you?
I haven't read the study yet, so let me just caveat this with I haven't actually looked at the data. But based on what I've heard, on the interwebs, which may not be an accurate representation of what really happened, my initial thinking is there's always a problem with trying to apply physics to a biological system. The human body is not a motor, it's not an engine, it's not a piston, whatever, it's not a car, it's whatever, like carburetor, it's a human body. It's not a closed system. I'm not saying thermodynamics don't apply at all, but those are principles of physics. The human body is a biological system, and we're an open system. We're not a bomb calorimeter. So I automatically have a problem when people try to shoehorn numbers into the human body. It's why when I have clients, I never talk about calories. I hate giving numbers because I think it's mostly nonsense. I'm willing to be wrong, but that bugs me. Now, with regard to the actual results I had, like I said, I didn't read the study, so I don't know. The plant-based people sort of spontaneously ate less, but was it because they reported being significantly less hungry, or were they bored with the food they were eating? Now, I don't know what they were fed, but if you're going to give me raw radishes and lentils and celery, I'm probably going to eat a lot less of it just because, I don't want that. Now put the ribeye and the blue cheese in front of me and I'm going to chow down. So, but again, I didn't read the study, so I don't know if they assessed, why did you eat less? Were you not hungry? Were you totally satisfied with the amount that you ate and you didn't need more? Or did you not want to eat more because this food is so gross? So that's a little sort of obnoxious of me to say, but we don't know, unless, and maybe you read the study, if they reported that they just weren't hungry.
Yeah, I read the whole study. I mean, it's a preprint. It's not published. It's not been through peer review, but I read the preprint.
Yeah.
I mean, they took photos of all the meals, and I mean, I have to say that obviously from a carnivore standpoint, it was very heavy in leafy green vegetables and that sort of stuff. So it really wasn't, it was probably by volume, it was still pretty heavily plant-based, even though there was a lot of, chicken and beef and stuff in there. The plant-based stuff, again, did not look particularly appealing to me, but obviously I'm a biased person there. I don't know if, maybe they said, okay, you can have some oatmeal with, stevia and some blueberries and almond milk. And maybe that appealed to people. Maybe they only have that a limited time. The rest of it was lentils and, just what you described, quinoa type stuff. So it could, and I think the menus were set. So they couldn't just say, it's not like in the environment where you can say, oh, well, Oreos are vegan, I'm gonna eat those. Those weren't given as options. They did claim that, a percentage of the calories from ultra processed, but they were calling things like dried apricots ultra processed. And so I think it is a lot of, one, it was only 2 weeks. So, I mean, to say you could maintain this for indefinitely is also.
That's a major problem right off the bat. Right. And also we know, and this is like a lot of people have been making this critique. It takes probably at least a week to even get fully into ketosis, maybe not a week, but it takes the first couple of days, you're still running off your stored glycogen. Then you got to ramp. We know this is a well-known thing that within the first week, you mostly lose water. This is like, this study is biased from the get-go. They've designed it in such a way to make low carb look not as good. I don't believe, Kevin Hall has been researching for enough years that he knows this. It's not like he doesn't know this is what they would have found. So this whole thing is a little bit dishonest to me. And frankly, I don't know why they're researching any of this anymore at all. It's like they're trying to prove their own bias. Now, why do they get so upset? God forbid somebody out there should be eating red meat and fatty pork and losing weight and getting healthy. God forbid somebody should take their health into their own hands and do it the wrong way. I don't understand why. It's like they're not even willing to accept that this really happened. Like everybody on the screen is lying. Like what is wrong with these people? I don't.
Yeah, obviously there's the problem with the design. I don't know if that's going to turn into a longer term study. I guess one of the problems, they say, it's very difficult to keep people in a metabolic ward more than a month, and so they kept them 2 weeks, and so that's tough to do that. But like I said, free world, when you have access to a grocery store and you can pick whatever you want off the shelves, very few people are going to pick for just the quinoa and the arugula. I mean, there's going to be people that are going to say, oh, I'll have this vegan dessert or this vegan cheese or this vegan whatever processed food. As you probably know, we've got, David Ludwig has come out and he's doing this study of studying this group, the carnivore community. So that will make it into publication hopefully by later this year. So we do have some people at least say that, yes, we're here. I felt like, I remember that cartoon, Horton Hears a Who, and we're all like, we're here, here we are, we're thriving. Look at me, look at the now thousands of us that have used, maybe not an exclusively carnivorous diet, many of us do, but many of us are saying, I'm eating a whole bunch of meat and I'm not dead, I'm not getting heart disease. Many of us have checked our coronary calcium scans and we're all very low or zeros. And more importantly, we lose weight, we lose diseases, we come off medications, which is what this is all about. And I agree your point at the very beginning about, it's not just about weight loss. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can lose weight. There's ways to be miserable and lose weight. There's ways to lose all your muscle mass and lose weight. But there's also ways to get healthy, which I think is
Right.
Different. And I think there's that's what we're more important about. Hey, let me just for some of you guys who know, Amy wrote a wonderful book called The Alzheimer's Antidote, and it digs into the etiology and perhaps some of the mitigation of Alzheimer's. Has there been, since you've written that book, I guess I know you wrote the original and it's been kind of revised a couple of years ago. Have you seen much update in that world with this type 3 diabetes, controlling brain metabolism and brain glucose handling?
Yeah, so for people that don't know, the book is called The Alzheimer's Antidote, and you can get that on Amazon. And I've definitely seen, the book is about 3 years old. It came out in March 2017. And in that time, there's been a lot more research on it, but it's still not coming down to the general public. It's still not reaching the patients and the loved ones and caregivers. And I feel like the average neurologist and the average family doctor still has no clue, but there's been a lot more studies. The studies are still kind of small. They're like one-off case reports, but of people with type 2 diabetes or metabolic syndrome who have cognitive impairment or diagnosed Alzheimer's. And they can show that the cognitive function gets better. It's not just subjective, like the person reporting, oh, I think my memory's better. They have diagnostic tests that they can give these people and they see that they're doing better. So there's definitely growing interest in the research world, but God knows how long it's going to take before that stuff reaches the average person,
Yeah, well, I know with Dale Bredesen is doing he's kind of, I guess, a point man on the research. Hopefully some other people have sort of followed that. I mean, obviously a lot of us are also, aware of that and, trying to, no one wants dementia, that's for sure. I mean, it's a tough one.
I think part of the problem with Alzheimer's is like there are some people doing really good research, but a lot of it is with MCT oil or exogenous ketones. They rarely use the actual ketogenic diet. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, if you're trying to isolate a variable, like do ketones help cognitive function? You can't, the ketogenic diet has so many different effects in the body that you can't tell what is responsible, versus if you just give somebody ketones, then you limit the confounding factors and the other variables. And then the other thing is, it's really hard to get somebody elderly with dementia to stick to a ketogenic diet. It's easier to sneak them some coconut oil or make them drink some ketones. And I also think and I don't know why this is, but we all know, right? Type 2 diabetes, PCOS, different, hypertension, all kinds of different health problems. Some of these things respond to a low carb diet within days, like within days. Sometimes, if you talk to Dr. Westman or Ted Naiman or Tro or any of them, when they have patients with type 2 diabetes that are on insulin, if they put them on a ketogenic diet, sometimes they have to stop the insulin the first day of the diet. That's how quickly the blood sugar comes down when you stop eating the carbs. For some reason, the brain does not respond as quickly. And so I think the diet, even if somebody does the diet, like the best way to deal with Alzheimer's is to not get it in the first place. Because once you have it, now, can we actually prevent it? I don't know. I wish I could say for sure, yes, keto prevents Alzheimer's. I can't say that. I think it's probably one of the best potential strategies there is. And not just keto, or not just carnivore, not just low carb, any type of diet and lifestyle stuff that keeps your blood sugar and insulin at normal levels. So not everybody needs keto, not everyone needs carnivore. You do have to eat in such a way that you're not jacking up your blood sugar and insulin all the time. But I think once you are severely cognitively impaired, it's not as easy to come back from that as it is to reverse type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, no, I obviously prevention is the way to go on almost anything we have out there. What somebody's asking me about measuring ketones. Are you in favor of that?
Measuring keto, no, for the most part, I discourage measuring because people don't know how to interpret the number. Same thing with blood sugar. They see a number, I'll get people writing to me. I was 3 days fasted and I did a high intensity workout. My blood sugar skyrocketed to 120. And I'm like, and congratulations, your body works exactly the way it's supposed to work. So I discourage testing because people don't understand how to interpret the number within context. But there is a time and a place for measuring. I usually suggest measuring if somebody's not getting the results they want, whatever that result might be, weight loss, bringing the blood sugar down, reversing hypertension, whatever it is. If what you're trying to do isn't happening, maybe you're not actually in ketosis. Maybe you're having too many carbs, maybe you're having whatever. So that's the first point of failure, so to speak. Like, if it's not working, that's the time to make sure you are actually in ketosis.
Yeah, I mean, there's also this sort of belief out there that to lose weight, you must be producing X amount of ketones. And I think that's been shown over and over that no, that's not necessarily the case.
It's definitely not the case. And I'll tell you why. Some people, if you've heard me on podcasts before, you can gain body fat in ketosis. And I know because I have a little addiction problem with mayonnaise. I'm not allowed to have mayonnaise in my house because my serving isn't the 1 tablespoon, my serving is half a jar. So if I eat mayonnaise ad lib, I can pee on a ketone strip and it is like black. It's the darkest you've ever seen. If you think I'm losing body fat eating 1,000 extra calories of mayonnaise a day, ketosis does not cause fat loss. It just doesn't. All ketosis means is that you're burning fat at a high rate. But if you're eating more fat than you're burning, you're gonna gain weight. I know we don't like to hear that in the low carb world, but you can't eat unlimited fat.
Yeah, that's a point I've made, quite frequently. And I think you have to differentiate between essential fat. I mean, fat is clearly essential. Fat is definitely beneficial. but there comes a point where, you know, you can do too much. And we saw that back years ago when we had the quote unquote, the butter chuggers, or the people that were drinking heavy cream and eating, you know, I mean, but when I'm not saying a tablespoon of coffee, I'm saying they're drinking, you know, cups of heavy cream, pouring some stevia in there, trying to get all this fat in their body. And then complaining that they weren't losing weight. Sure, that can be a problem there. What are your thoughts on protein requirements? I know that's very controversial. I know there's people that think that protein is evil and we should minimize it, and it's going to all turn into glucose, or it's all going to drive mTOR and make us die and give us cancer. And there's other people, myself, including myself, that think protein is beneficial. But where do you fall on the protein sort of spectrum?
I'm a fan of higher protein, and I think I'm in the Ben Bickman, Ted Naiman, Sean Baker kind of camp, where protein is hugely important. Most people, maybe not in the carnivore world, but most people in the sort of general public are massively under eating protein. I don't think you have to go out of your way to gorge on it. And I think a lot of people misinterpret what Ted Naiman has been saying, because he's just telling people, look, if you want to get as lean as possible, or if you're stuck, maybe consider going for leaner meat. He's not telling people to avoid fat, to like cook your ground beef and then wash it with, you know, people used to do this in like the 1980s when they had to get rid of every last gram of fat. They would like cook ground beef in a skillet and then literally put it in a colander and wash it to get, like, he's not saying do that. He's not saying eat everything lean. He's just saying, hey, if you're struggling to lose some body fat, maybe shift the proportion to a little bit more protein and a little bit less fat. And I agree with that. I think if you're doing the carnivore diet, you probably don't really have to worry about it that much, because you're just naturally going to be eating a good amount of protein with some amount of fat, you know, whether it's bacon or steak or whatever. I don't think it's that much of a problem. And in terms of like the whole mTOR thing, and I just think there's so much misunderstanding about this, and so much of what we know or what we think we know is based on people eating a high carb diet. How much of any of this research has been done in people eating very low carb diets? All of this sort of red meat causes cancer and red meat does this and protein kills your kidneys. It's epidemiological mostly. And when they do have an actual intervention, it's in people eating a sort of normal standard diet, which Dr. Bickman is constantly emphasizing that the effects of any of this in a low carb, low insulin state are very different from the effect of adding all this to somebody who's hyperglycemic and hyperinsulinemic all the time. So that's the very long answer to the fact that, like, I don't think anyone has to worry about too much protein.
Yeah, and we've had Ben on, and I like Ben. I think he's a pretty reasonable, smart guy. I mean, I don't know. He's written a book called Why We Get Diseases. I had the fortune to read the pre-release copy, and it really digs into insulin resistance. There are some people out there. I don't know if you follow, because I've really dug into insulin resistance quite a bit. There is a belief that branched chain amino acids in the blood, so branched chain amino acidemia, leads to things called acylcarnitines, which have been associated with insulin resistance. And so the association, I talked to Ben about this, and he said he thinks it's a reverse causality. And what we see with a lot of diabetics is they begin to catabolize lean tissue. You know, you see the classic long-term diabetic, they look like a potato with sticks. You know, they get this big, central obesity, and they have skinny arms and legs. That's what your classic, type 2 diabetic looks like. So they catabolize your muscle mass, and that may be where the branched chain amino acidemia is coming from, not necessarily dietary. But Kevin Hall's study did show elevated branched chain amino acidemia in there relative to the plant versus the animal one. So I'm just trying to figure out to sort that out. There were some questions here, and I want to make sure I get to some of these questions. Somebody was asking about, let me see if I can find it here real quick. Sorry, Amy. Carl was just asking about insulin resistance. Again, this is more has to do with the Alzheimer's stuff. Are the neurons themselves insulin resistance and then blocking up glucose uptake, or is there another energy signaling problem?
Well, that's a good question. Based on what based on my understanding of the research, the neurons themselves are not insulin resistant. The glucose, the brain is not even taking up glucose at the normal rate. And they can measure this by PET scan. Like, if you have cancer, they inject you with like a radio labeled glucose to see where it's going and where the tumors are sucking it up. They can do it to measure brain glucose uptake for the opposite reason. The tumors suck up glucose. If you have cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's, they'll see how much the brain is not taking up the glucose. So the problem isn't even really with the neurons themselves. It could be the blood-brain barrier. It could be, I think there's a lot we don't know, but we know that these neurons, the neurons are not even dead. They're not, we could say, oh, it's the death of neurons. It's not, because when we give these people ketones, they get better. Now, it's not 100%. It's not like all of a sudden they go from 40% normal cognition to 100%. Unfortunately, it's not that great, but they do have noticeable improvement. If those cells were dead, there wouldn't be any improvement whatsoever because they couldn't metabolize anything, glucose or ketones or anything, but they do metabolize the ketones. That's sort of the whole reason why anyone would even bother trying a ketogenic diet or exogenous ketones for Alzheimer's.
Amy, somebody, Clark is asking your thoughts on different fasting, schemes, whether it's intermittent fasting, one meal a day, or extended fasting. Do you have any thoughts on the utility or the problems associated with fasting? Was it good, bad? Depends. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. So like anything, it's really all about the context. What are you trying to do? Because I have a huge amount of respect for Jason Fung and Megan Ramos and their whole fasting, thing. And I think there's a lot of problems with it, though. I have no problem with, if you're only hungry once or twice a day and you're only eating 1 or 2 meals a day, that to me is not fasting. That's eating when you're hungry. To me, fasting implies deliberetely going without food when you want food, when you're hungry, when you want to eat, but you're not eating. That's fasting. I don't even like the term intermittent fasting. I prefer time-restricted eating. I know it's just semantics, but the time-restricted eating just says, well, I only eat between such and such hours because I'm not hungry before or after that. I think I think that's fine. If you're following your hunger signals and you're only hungry once a day, that's fine. But I see, I get clients, like, I'm a lot more concerned with the psychological damage that can be done by fasting versus any physical problems. And by psychological damage, I mean that I get people writing to me who are like feeling guilty. My feeding window didn't open till noon, but I was so hungry and I ate at 11. And because people think that this is a binary system. You're either fasting or you're getting cancer. Because like every time you eat, you're stopping autophagy, blah, blah, blah. This kind of thinking it's not mentally healthy. And I think it's people just, I just think there's a lot of people that are terrified to eat now. They are really scared to eat. And can somebody, I'm not saying fasting is unsafe. I mean, I think there's definitely reasons to do it. It's context. There are good reasons to do it, but I don't think anyone should feel guilty if they eat 2 or even, heaven forbid, 3 meals a day. We're always going back to like ancestral living, and I'm not even talking about thousands of years ago. Look at 60 years ago, when obesity was very rare, type 2 diabetes was very rare. Most people were having breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I don't think this sort of, I don't believe in imposing arbitrary rules about when you're allowed to eat, when you're not allowed to eat. I think one of the psychological benefits to fasting, though, is teaching yourself that it's okay to be hungry, right? The second you get that first little hunger pang, you don't have to go to the fridge. It's okay to let that hunger really, like, okay, now I'm really hungry. Now I'm going to have my pork chop, instead of like, oh, I'm a little snacky, I'll just grab that one little thing. So it's really all context. And what I really, really don't like is that if you're new to low carb and keto the last few months, or maybe even the last year or so, you would get the wrong impression that fasting is required. People say keto and IF, keto and IF. How about just keto? Like, fasting was never a thing. It was never part of the Atkins diet. It was not part of protein power, and people did great on these plans. And I just worry that people think fasting is required, or they're doing something wrong if they're not fasting. And that's just not, it's, can it help some people? Yeah. Is it required? No.
Yeah, I definitely like that sentiment. It can help some people, but it's certainly not required. And I've talked about this, your diet should, if you're eating quote unquote a species appropriate diet, whether it's carnivore, keto, low carb, paleo, whatever, God forbid, maybe even vegan, which I doubt. But I mean, it kind of sets you up into that pattern where we're not just, like you said, snacky, constantly eating. And I remember, like, when I was a kid, we would, you'd be complaining, Mom, I'm hungry at 3 p.m. or right after you got home from school, and dinner wasn't until 6. And they said, just, you'll spoil your appetite for dinner. And now that doesn't happen. It's like, well, here's a gummy, or here's some gummy bears, or here's some granola or something like that. So, and the French, I was saying, I don't know if it's a French, but I can't remember how to say it in French, but it's basically hunger is the best sauce. And so your food tastes a lot better when you're a little bit hungry. It's kind of like, wow. And you really appreciate, whereas a lot of people just eat, and it's like, because they're hungry and they're eating the meal, it's like, this really wasn't even that good or satisfying. But when you're kind of hungry and you get this meal, and it's like, wow, that was really, really pleasurable. So I think it can be used as a tool when it comes to fasting. I mean, it's certainly a tool in the tool chest for certain people. But I do agree, there are people that become pathologic about it. Yeah, I'm scared to eat. Oh my God, I'm
Yeah.
not supposed to eat for another 15 minutes. I'm starving.
Right.
I'm hypoglycemic. I'm about to pass out. That sort of thing. I think most of us in this community experience, I think the most common eating pattern for this carnivore community is twice a day. Sometimes once a day, sometimes 3 times a day. And I know I fall into that pretty naturally. And it's usually appetite based. I find sometimes, like with exercise, I find exercise kills my appetite. Sometimes if I wake up in the morning a little bit hungry. If I exercise, I'm like, I'm not hungry again for many hours. And we know there's studies on that show that exercise can blunt the ghrelin response. And, there's different, as you know, there's lots and lots of hormones that go into satiety now that we're just discovering. Let me ask you, when we look at your profile, you say keto with sanity or something like that. It's kind of like, like I said, I think there's some people in here that are relatively well grounded. And I, even though I'm on this crazy carnivore fringe, I try to do it in a reasonable way and say, guess what? You can have a raspberry and it's not going to kill most people, and I don't think we have to sort of, because you have people like, I put up some barbacoa the other day on my Instagram. Barbacoa it's just meat, and it's got some spices in it. It's got a little bit of spice in there. And I was like, that's just for variety. And people were like, oh my God, that's not carnivore. I said, look, dude, I literally wrote a book on this stuff. I can call it whatever I want. I've got some liberty to that. But some people tolerate spices, and it makes it more pleasurable. And I think that's what it's about. But anyway, talk to me about keto without the crazy. That's what it is. What's the crazy part? Tell me about the crazy.
That phrase kind of happened spontaneously. I said it on a video once, and I was like, ooh, that's good. I'm going to keep that. It's, I feel very fortunate. I've been eating low carb for a long time, like 15, 18 years. And I'm not always super strict keto, but I'm always low carb to some extent. And I feel really fortunate that when I was new to this, Facebook did not exist. Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Zoom, none of this even existed when I was new. There was the Atkins diet, there was protein power. I think there was a book called the Schwarzbein Principle, some of the old school low carb books. And there was the internet existed. There was like one forum. And there was much less information, but there was much less nonsense and much less misinformation. You didn't have every little Tom, Dick, and Harry who's been eating this way for 5 minutes trying to tell you what to do and trying to tell you that's not keto, that's not allowed. And like I said, whether it's the fasting or even, this is going to be a real controversial statement, but I'm not even a real fear monger about the seed oils, the corn oil, the soybean oil. I don't live on the stuff. Like, if you come to my house, I don't have a jug of Wesson corn oil to fry food in. But if I'm at a restaurant and I get blue cheese dressing, I know it has soybean oil. I don't really care. I think that a lot of the effects of those oils, again, are different in the context of a low carb, low glucose, low insulin state versus adding that fuel to the hyperglycemic, hyperinsulinemic fire. Anyway, my point is all of this new stuff, like this new fear over these seed oils. Meanwhile, 20 years ago, people were going to the regular supermarket, getting their regular ranch dressing, getting their regular fish canned, tuna sometimes canned in the soybean oil. And guess what? They lost the weight, the diabetes went away, all that same good stuff happened. Now, I'm not telling people to live on those oils, but there's all this new stuff in the keto world that was never part of it, and people did fine. And, depending on who you follow, there's certain doctors that are telling you have to have this many cups of greens and you have to drink my alkaline smoothie and you can't have this and you can't have. How did this get so crazy? And that's why when people are really overwhelmed, I give them two pieces of advice. I say, read the Atkins book and forget everything else. Or I call it an information vacation. I tell them, listen, you know what you need to do. You need to just keep the carbs really low. Or if you're doing the carnivore diet, you just need to only eat animal foods. Do that and take a break. Take like a week off. No podcasts, no blogs, no videos, step away from the craziness and just do the diet. Like, don't abandon the diet, do the diet, but do it privately, do it in your own time, and stop that avalanche of conflicting information. So it's because it is crazy now. It has gotten crazy, and somebody needs to do keto without the crazy and tell other people that it doesn't have to be so complicated.
Yeah, I think one of the issues with keto for me is I don't know what it is anymore. I mean, there's so many different, it's just like, what could keto be? Just, I know obviously, because I want to follow up on the seed oil question, because there will be a lot of people that do find that controversial. Now you at home, like you said, you don't have Western oil, so you don't cook in it. And I think one of the, the sort of proponents of seed oils, you look at guys like Walter Willett will say, well, we know that these polyunsaturated fats are associated with lower LDL cholesterol per se. I mean, there's some studies that seem to show that might be a benefit. Then it goes into, what do you believe is the root cause of cardiometabolic disease? Is it lowering your LDL? Is it a complex combination thing, which is what I tend to believe. There's a number of things that go into that. So, I mean, I guess what you're saying is, if I go to a restaurant and eat, I'm not going to sit there and tell the cook, hey, make sure the meat is cooked this particular way. And just do that. But you're not saying, let's go home and fry everything up in Wesson. I mean, are you doing that too?
No, exactly. I don't think we should make these oils like a staple in our diet, but I'm not going to be terrified of every last molecule of it, because, so many doctors that use this in their clinical setting, they have patients on Medicaid. They have patients who can't afford, they're not going to go to Whole Foods and get the organic avocado oil salad dressing. They're not going to do it. And how do we make this way of eating? And there's certain communities that are very underprivileged, and they are the hardest hit by morbid obesity and diabetes and cardiovascular disease and hypertension. You can't tell people that are living from paycheck to paycheck to go to the organic market and get the $8 a bottle, whatever, and guess what? I'm sorry if this offends people's tender sensibilities, but you can reverse diabetes getting your food at Walmart. You can do it. Buy the cheap ground beef, buy the Ken's ranch dressing, and don't let anyone, because people have been doing this successfully for 50 years, and the cholesterol thing, I'm in your camp. I think it's largely meaningless. I mean, it's not that I'll eat a soybean oil or a canola oil dressing because I think, oh, it'll lower my LDL. I don't care about that at all. For me, it's really that it makes this diet much more enjoyable and easier for me to stick to over the rest of my life. I'm in a fortunate position where every now and then I do treat myself to like Mark Sisson's Primal Kitchen dressings or whatever, condiments that are a little better, oils, if you want to use that word, better, but I don't have any fear of using the regular stuff.
Yeah, I think that's something that, again, I know that we have this sort of, You know, and again, it can be paleo, it can be keto, it can be anything, or even, you know, the plant-based. They try to recreate these junk foods, you know, with different recipes and artificial sweeteners and whatever. And it's kind of like, so it kind of gives you this sort of false security that you can eat that on a regular basis because, well, it's keto and therefore it's not going to harm me. And therefore I can eat this, you know, this keto cheesecake every day and I'll fulfill my desire to eat my birthday cake every single day of my life, where it may make more sense just to eat the regular damn stuff and eat it once every 6 weeks or once every 2 months, or eat on your actual birthday or whatever. Of course, everybody has a birthday. If you work, you know, it's kind of like, you know, I don't know, if you go to school, it's pizza parties. And I mean, you're inundated with reasons to celebrate. But I mean, if you just say, look, I'm going to celebrate on Christmas and my birthday, maybe one other family member's birthday, and stick to that. I mean, it could be a lot
I
easier.
could not agree more. Every year, I say this every Halloween because parents on Twitter, oh, I can't believe my kid, all the sugar, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, listen, if your kid only ever pigged out on sugar at Halloween and Christmas and their birthday, we'd all be fine. The problem is we eat like it's Halloween and Thanksgiving 365 days a year. If you're ever gonna let your kid have sugar, let it be on Halloween. You know, let it be on Christmas. Like, don't, yeah,
Well,
it's, oh, you know what it is.
it's kind of interesting, you know. I mean, and maybe many of us don't remember, but I mean, you see this image of the child that gorges on, you know, the young child, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, eats all this Halloween candy, and what has he got? He's got this horrible stomach ache. They feel miserable. Oh my God, I ate too much candy. And you know, now we see people that go on a restrictive, you know, carnivore keto diet, and then many of them inevitably they binge, and what happens? Oh, they feel miserable, you know. But because we've sort of built up immunity to that, because we're eating it constantly, we don't get that I feel miserable anymore. I mean, or we don't get the acute I feel miserable. It's just a chronic, I'm depressed.
You're miserable all the time.
I'm at a lower level of misery, but it's constant and chronic because we're only eating, instead of gorging on the candy, we're eating it consistently all throughout the day.
Yeah.
And it may be good to, you know, like you say, you know, you tell your kids, hey, look, that's what all that crap does to you. Enjoy it. Enjoy the sore stomach, and you realize this is not good for you. It's kind of a mild dose of stuff that's not, you know, not good for us.
Yeah.
All right, let me see who else has a question here. I know somebody had, I think these are all his comments here, being locked in the ward.
Well, while there's a lull, can I just put in a little plug for my, I wrote an ebook recently about breaking fat loss stalls on keto. And one of the things
absolutely.
I talk about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sure. Of course.
Yeah, thanks. It's not carnivore specific. It's more keto, low carb.
Sure,
so I don't know how many of you will be interested, but it's about breaking a fat loss stall. And I have a whole chapter on kind of what we were talking about before, which is overdoing the fat. Just because you're in ketosis doesn't mean you're going to magically lose body fat. So anyway, it's called The Stall Slayer. And right now it's just an ebook. It's a PDF. So you can buy it to read electronically. If you want a hard copy, just print it out. But we're gonna have a print on demand on Amazon probably within the next month, and we'll have a Kindle version. But it's stallslayer.com, and if you use the code Carnivore, 10% off. So little promo code Carnivore for 10% off. Stallslayer.com.
Thanks, Sammy. Can you? I mean, without giving away the punchline, what are the general areas that you kind of talk about? I mean, if you wrote a whole book on it, so obviously it's not just don't eat as much fat. There's got to be more to it than that, right?
Yeah. So overdoing the fat is one of them. Overdoing the carbs, you know, and it's not that people are like having bagels and pasta. They know that's kind of not the right thing, but they might just be overdoing, you know, like almonds are not zero carb and peanuts are not zero carb. And even, you know, there are people out there who are so extremely sensitive that they can't overdo even carbs from things like broccoli or cauliflower. Like the total amount of carbohydrate, no matter how quote unquote wholesome the food, has to be limited. So too much carbs. I see a lot of undiagnosed or improperly treated hypothyroidism. And that's kind of controversial, but I see it a lot, I think, because who comes to me? The people that are struggling, right? If they're doing keto or low carb or carnivore and it's going great, they don't need my help. The people that come to me are coming because something's wrong. And so I see that all the time. And no matter how disciplined you are with diet and exercise, if your thyroid hormones are out of whack, you are going to have a really hard time losing body fat. And I do also talk about things like stress and sleep and alcohol and exercise, but the stress and sleep, it's not unimportant, but I think if your diet is where it needs to be, those things have much less of an effect. Like if you're really on point with your diet, if you're working out, you're building muscle and you're not sleeping that well, it's probably not going to affect you as much as it would someone who's, eating garbage all the time and is like very sedentary, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And that point about thyroid is, I think, is a very good one. I think, and I have seen people actually improve their thyroid health, via different diet strategies. We've seen that occur where people are able to come off meds, but there may
Yeah.
be a period of time where you do need that additional support, and maybe you can come off it, maybe you can't. But I mean, I think that's an important thing to realize. And I just see that, hypothyroidism is so very common. It's a very common condition. It seems to affect women a little bit more than men.
Yeah.
With that for sure. What are your thoughts on just general supplements? Are you everybody needs to be on this supplement, vitamin D, magnesium, whatever. Do you have any thoughts on supplementation in general?
Yeah, I think again, it's just like the fasting. It's all about context. I don't think, certainly not everybody needs them. I think some people can probably benefit from them, whether it's like if you are a little bit constipated, magnesium can help with that. Um, what else? I mean, that's really the biggie is the magnesium. But I take some stuff from time to time, almost like a little insurance policy. I mean, I've found, I don't know. I take some, if I ever recommend supplements for clients, it's a very individualized thing. I don't have any blanket recommendations, like everybody has to buy this magnesium and this potassium. So I don't believe in being completely anti-supplement, but I think the diet really should be doing the heavy lifting. I think if you look at your diet and you think there's some real shortfalls, or you honestly feel signs and symptoms of something, then take that thing, and see what happens.
Yeah, and Nithi's asking about people with radiated thyroids. Sometimes I guess people sometimes have, if they have thyroid cancer, they'll have thyroid radiation. Do you see people struggling to do that? Or are they able to be successful? Or have
Yeah,
you
I
run into
think
that much?
if you've had the radiation, I think you basically have no thyroid gland, and you have to be on medication because you can't make the hormone. You have to take it, I think. And then it's just a matter of finding the right dose, because that's a problem too. I get some people that know they have a thyroid problem and they're on medication, but they're not on the right type or the right dose. And if somebody comes to me and they're on medicine, and yet I can see from their paperwork that they're still screaming off the charts with symptoms, I'm like, clearly this medication is not working for you. You need to try something else. And that's something that relates to any of this diet, whether it's keto, carnivore, low carb, or even with regard to the supplements. I'll get people coming to me with a list of like 32 pills that they're taking every day, the fish oil and the magnesium and the K and the probiotic. I'm like, and we'll go through one by one. Why are you taking this? Who told you to take it? Do you think it's helping? Do you actually notice any difference when you take it? And if the answer is no, goodbye, it's gone. Unless the person wants to be swallowing 30 pills a day, which most of them don't. Um, so yeah, I think that's a good way to assess things. How do I feel? Is this working for me? And if it's not, it may not be that you're doing it wrong. Maybe it's not the best thing for you.
Yeah, that's true. This is something that, one of the things that I often will tell people, because people will come up to me, I really want to be a carnivore. I'm like, why? I mean, what is the point? Why don't you just want to be healthy? Because they feel like they've got to have this identity. And I think this is a problem. And even though I obviously have been an advocate for this type of diet, but I'm just saying the goal is to be healthy, not to be some, name. It's kind of like, I really want to make carnivore work. I'm like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I mean, try something else. I mean, why would you not do that? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I certainly would. I mean, it wouldn't work for me. I'd be doing something else in a heartbeat. I mean, not that I don't like it. I mean, I love what I'm doing. I mean, I enjoy the heck out of the food I'm eating, the thing here is to make sure we're promoting health at the end of the day. Let me see what else I can get into, Amy. I mean, you've got so many topics I know you've covered, and you're very eloquent at talking, and you're fun to read. If you guys haven't read Amy's stuff, she does a really good job of putting things, making it accessible and entertaining, and kind of making some of the concepts that might be more difficult.
I wish I was still blogging. I mean, writing is really my first love, but nobody reads blog posts anymore. It's all about video. And that's how I can reach so many more people doing videos. So that's what I do mostly now. I'm not giving up writing, but I'm definitely doing more videos. Although we just turned in the manuscript. I teamed up with one of the keto MDs to write a book about, but it's going to be controversial in the carnivore world. It's about how to find your own personal carbohydrate tolerance, you know, because some people need really strict keto, some people don't, some people can have a more moderate carb diet, but we do have a little section in the book on fiber, and we basically say, as far as we know, there's no requirement for fiber in the diet. And so even for vegetables, you know, they're allowed, but they're not, if you don't want to eat vegetables, don't eat vegetables. So
yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, people that say fiber is required is essential. I'm like, well, I mean, look at the 1,000 people who don't eat it; they're not dead, so it can't be essential. I think it's conditionally beneficial, quite honestly, and I think it's conditionally harmful for some people too, as well. I mean, I think it just depends. Well, that's good. Who did? Can you say who you teamed up with? Just I don't know.
Oh, Dr. Westman.
Oh, Eric. Okay, nice. Yeah. I've met Eric a few times now. He's a good guy. In fact, the last speaking engagement I did before the lockdown was with Eric Westman's ADAPT thing. So that's. Are you, well, I guess we don't know yet all the speaking engagements, but I assume you're going to be back on the speaking circuit, you know, as.
I mean, I had some stuff that got canceled, of course, just because of the virus. The next thing I'm supposed to be at is Low Carb USA in San Diego in August. And as of now, that's still on, but I don't know, as it gets closer, maybe they'll end up canceling it. But I think for now it's still on. Yeah,
I think I might be there too. I think I saw my name advertised. I can't remember if they asked me or not. They kind of maybe, I don't know if I ever confirmed, but I said, yeah, maybe. And then they put me on the thing. So I might see you there. So that'll be good. Let me see if anyone, you know, somebody's saying broccoli, yuck. Yeah, I'm not a fan of broccoli, quite honestly.
I have a question for you, actually, or for anyone. I'm not watching the chat window, but if people want to chime in. I know so many people who do carnivore are just like meat and water, or like red meat and water. And mostly beef, not even, you know, beef and salt and water. But do you, and I know they just feel best that way. I'm just curious as to the community as a whole. Are most people doing that, or the majority are doing like eggs and bacon and pork and beef? Like, is it more variety? I'm just curious. My, you know, without having to ask every single person in the window, I think most people do a little bit more variety. In fact, I'm right now, you may not have been following me, but I'm doing a little bit leaner stuff as I'm leaning out, and I'm eating a lot more fish in the diet recently, but it's still. I remember a while back you would post like, and there was salmon, and people were like, why are you eating fish? Because I like it. That's usually the answer, because it was always some ulterior motive. You're trying to get, I know you're trying to balance your omega-3. It's like, no, exactly. I felt like eating salmon today. You know, I eat because I like what I eat. You know, it's kind of funny. But I mean, I have made an intention, you know, because I don't know if you know, I'm kind of this crazy competitive person. I'm thinking about doing some CrossFit stuff, and I have to be a little bit lighter for that. So I've kind of made this effort to lean out. And so you know, again, as we've talked about at the beginning of the thing, I find that leaner meats helps me lean out. I mean, it's a very simple, straightforward thing. It does pay a little bit of, you know, understanding that the calories, while not the only driving factor, there is some element to not overeating and energy. You know, as Ted Naiman talked about protein energy ratio, I think you can overeat energy, whether it's fats, carbohydrates. I guess theoretically protein, but it's pretty damn hard to do in protein. But well, Amy, thank you so much. I unfortunately have to do I'm going to do a podcast with a guy named Fred Provenza, who's a really nice, doing a lot of research in the world of regenerative versus, you know, grain-fed meats. We're going to talk about some of the science on that, so that'll be interesting. So, well, and I'll just take like 2 seconds to say, absolutely. Yes, if you have the financial means to support a local farmer, do it. I know I said, you can eat at Walmart. if that's all you can afford, do the best you can. I work at a local farm here in North Carolina. I absolutely support, but that meat is not cheap. If you can afford it, if you can spend your dollars locally, do it and support that kind of farming. So definitely.
Did you move to North Carolina? I guess you were in Pennsylvania for a period of time, right?
That was a while back, a long time
okay.
ago. I've been in North Carolina for about a year and a half. I was in the DC area for like 6 years before this.
Okay, well, nice. North Carolina's pretty. All right, well, show us where's your social media so we can get that out there so people can follow you.
I'm most active on Twitter. My handle is Tuit Nutrition, TUIT Nutrition. My blog is tuitnutrition.com. The ebook is stallslayer.com. Use that Carnivore, the code Carnivore for 10% off. And I don't really do anything on Facebook. I'm not a huge Facebook fan. And I have my YouTube channel. The channel name is Tuit Nutrition.
Awesome. Hey, I'm not sure if Amanda Lee is in here or somebody, maybe Becky. Maybe we can get that discount. Is it okay if we put that discount code on the MeatRx website for?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, well, because we have a book reading list and we didn't. That one's coming out. It'd be nice to do that if people want to purchase that. So we'll put that in our book list. Amy, thank you so much. It's always wonderful talking to you. I find you a nice source of reason and good wealth of knowledge. So you guys take care.
Same
and as a fellow Air Force person, once again, thanks for your service back in the day. So
you too. Thank you. All right,
guys.
thanks for being here, everybody.
Right. We'll see everybody later. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.